Alrighty, we are doing this once again today. So we go ahead and just kind of get everything running for you. Those of you just kind of joining in, welcome, welcome. All right. So today we're going to be going over Tropical Storm Marco and Tropical Storm Laura. Basically the same as what we were doing last night. So we're going to let some more people kind of trickle in here. And we'll kind of go ahead and jump in and get started with this. We certainly have our storms doing very interesting things this morning, especially with Tropical Storm Laura, which we'll kind of talk about first. And good morning. Good morning, good morning. So first things first, Tropical Storm Laura. First, kind of hot off the plate here, it has moved over Cuba and is now kind of situated actually in this general vicinity over here, moving off of the Cuban Peninsula and now moving off towards the west-northwest. So this is a little bit south of where most models actually had it yesterday, and that is very important because that is going to determine how much inner core structure Laura is actually able to get later today. So Laura in itself has very interesting processes that are kind of going on right now, and we're going to pull up the track forecast here. So give me a moment. Is there a chance that this doesn't have land interaction with Cuba? It is entirely possible that we start to see more of a track that is focused more so closer to the coastline. There is the possibility that this could actually move just a little bit south here, but it looks like some land interaction with Cuba is going to happen. So it looks like that there will be some sort of interaction at this current point in time, but how much interaction is going to determine any short-term movements and deviations in here, which we can actually pull that up here on the recon page. If we go out here and look at the recon for Laura, go down to the Air Force Reconnaissance. So you can kind of see where they're kind of looking at the center of circulation right here. And that is kind of moving west-northwest, and that would be near the Cuba Peninsula, the western part of Cuba right here. So we'll be watching that very carefully because this has the potential that it's trying to reorganize its inner core structure now. And the way that this is going to be heading is this will be heading in the general direction over the next few days of the Gulf Coast states here. And this could affect portions over towards Texas and Louisiana, as a stronger hurricane, even potentially a major hurricane, is certainly possible as we kind of progress throughout the next few days, depending on how the inner core structure does down here and with land interaction. And that's kind of one of the main primary concerns, is that we still have to see how this fares with the land interaction. But the good news is that unlike with the southern part of Cuba right here, the western part of the peninsula is not mountainous terrain. There's actually a lot of flatter ground across this region, and that is going to help to slow down any weakening phase that once this inner core moves over, it is likely to retain somewhat of an inner core structure. And because this is so narrow, on the order of about 25 to 50 miles, as this inner core works its way northwest, or west-northwest, it's not going to spend very much time over land because it's moving at about 21 miles per hour. So you can imagine this only might spend about an hour or two over land before moving back over the open water. And unlike with Puerto Rico and also for southeast Cuba, it doesn't have the mountainous terrain to work within, which is a little bit concerning because this mountainous terrain actually helped to weaken the storm a little bit and try to kind of disrupt what inner core structure is there. And without these very tall mountains now in the way in a very narrow landmass, this has the opportunity to be strengthening right all the way up until it kind of reaches the peninsula and then right off when it comes out into the Gulf of Mexico. And that's very concerning going forward with time. And I'll kind of show you the track map that is associated with Laura. Right now, we don't have any watches or warnings in effect, but this is expected to be a Category 2 hurricane on approach. Now, right now, it's sitting down near Cuba. This is when it comes up, starts making its approach into the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf Coast states. Eventually, this is going to probably move up while it's strengthening and then start its turn. But where exactly it starts its turn, if it's here when it starts its turn or here when it starts its turn, makes a very big difference in who gets what impacts and who gets the worst. And that's a little bit concerning because we still don't know, and we still have a wide range of opportunities from either all the way from Houston all the way through portions of even eastern Louisiana that are under the gun for direct landfall threats from Laura. Now, regarding Tropical Storm Marco, it did weaken to a tropical storm last night, or last night and this morning, and as such, the hurricane warnings have been canceled for all of the landmasses over here in Louisiana. This is going to start its west-northwest turn here very soon, and then more of a westerly turn. Tropical storm warnings remain in effect all the way to basically near the Mississippi, Alabama, Florida line. So, we will have to watch that very carefully because this is going to bring some very heavy rainfall, and for what it's worth, this is already producing very heavy rainfall up near Tallahassee in the Florida Panhandle right now, producing some very heavy rainfall. Some tops on these thunderstorms are getting all the way up to near 47,000 feet. So, very strong thunderstorms approaching the Florida Panhandle from Marco. Hello. So if we kind of bounce back real quick to the visible satellite imagery, one of the concerning factors is the fact of the matter that this is not over portions of Cuba anymore. I'm very sorry for your loss, man. I'm very sorry about that, and I know it's a very difficult time, so just hang in there. Things will get better, trust me. But this is sitting over open water, and it was originally supposed to be inland. So this has a little bit more time to actually move west-northwest and strengthen in this environment over here near Cuba. And that's a problem. That is a very big problem going forward because now this has a chance to build that inner core structure and get better organized instead of being a very broad, loosely organized system. And for what it's worth, the HWRF model, I'll say it'd be a Category 3. Yeah, the Hurricane Center really has that kind of pinned down about 105, and they kind of note that it will become a major hurricane, or it could become a major. So, is there a chance that this could become a hurricane before landfall in Cuba? So, I don't think so, and you can kind of see one of the reasons why is this is kind of very broadly organized in through here. Now, of course, anything is possible if you get a smaller inner core to develop. But this is so broadly organized, and thanks in part because of the mountainous terrain last night, it was able to disrupt the inner core just enough to disallow it to become very strong right off the gate. But it has a chance to reorganize its inner core today, and at the very least, it will be getting better organized on approach into the Cuban Peninsula. So. There is always a slim chance that it could become a hurricane before Cuba, but I'm not seeing any indications of that right now. So, certainly some good news. But the bad news is that this would end up kind of allowing the storm to be better organized once it leaves Cuba, and it has a chance to actually strengthen further. So, that's kind of the bad news with that sort of situation. And again, a track in through this region, it just gives more time over water, and these water temperatures, for what it's worth, is very warm. And you can kind of see that depiction on the HWRF. This is basically our hurricane-specific models, and these are one of the best hurricane models out there. And, showing 993 millibars, before kind of making landfall west-northwest. Now, the Florida Keys will have to deal with some tropical storm force gusts today, maybe some isolated tornadoes as well, but you can see most of that outer kind of shell, basically, of these tropical storm force winds should stay away from Key West. And then really the H-Warf significantly intensifies this into a major hurricane over the next few days. This is actually very early Wednesday. So this would be a period of what we call rapid intensification. And that, I'm not going to show the rest of it, but, 946 on the pressure. That's, 946 millibars moving, towards land. So that's certainly not a good sign at all. And I did not see the HMON, but we'll take a look here at what the HMON shows. This replaces the old GFDL hurricane model. A little bit broader in the structure, and the HMON actually has this resolved a little bit better with the higher pressures today. So I'm more inclined initially to believe the HMON, but even the HMON just deepens this out the wazoo. You notice really erratic structural changes here. And then basically west-northwest, and it just deepens this. That's 964. That is over a Category 3 hurricane by 2 p.m. Wednesday. So, for what it's worth, both of these hurricane-specific models just deepen this crazy. And that water temperature, and we can actually kind of take a look at this, that the water temperatures are very warm in this area. I mean, they are stifling warm where Laura is going to be traveling in this area. I mean, that's 31 to 30, that is, 30 to 31 Celsius. And these water temperatures, in here, that's closing in on about 90 Fahrenheit. So, man, you have to imagine that's just rocket fuel for these tropical cyclones. So, I do see that this will become potentially a major hurricane on approach into the Gulf Coast. And even Levi Cowan from Tropical Tidbits, where these graphics are produced from, he even noted that, everyone needs to prepare anywhere from a Category 2 to a Category 4 because it's entirely possible that this strengthens fairly significantly in the Gulf. And especially if it gets any inner core structure today and does manage to intensify a little near Cuba, that's a sign to me that this will blossom and rapidly intensify into the Gulf of Mexico, where this thing has and stands a better chance of becoming a fairly powerful hurricane, which most models seem to indicate that it will. And for reference, it will be tracking generally somewhere along this area. So from anywhere from near about Houston all the way through portions of Louisiana. And even for what it's worth, the eastern part of Louisiana needs to be monitoring, because that is going to push some storm surge up into this region. That is going to produce some storm surge into some of these low-lying areas, and this area is very vulnerable to storm surge. So it will provide some storm surge impacts to portions of Louisiana even, and even eastern Louisiana. So hello. Welcome everybody again. These are kind of one of the situations where you kind of almost want to pull your hair out in some situations, because you just don't know where this thing is going yet. But we're starting to get a better consensus on where this is going to go. And I'll take a look here at the actual path. Let's see, there we go. So this is the 12Z guidance. This just came out about an hour ago today. And you can kind of see where we still have some track spread, but most notably the CMCI has finally corrected further west. Now it's still the furthest east solution, but it will be interesting. Hey, I'm doing good. How are you doing? And hope everything is going well with you. But the CMCI is still the furthest east solution currently. But you notice where last night its solution was into the Florida Panhandle. Now it's more towards the east coast of the Louisiana region. So that indicates to me that every single model has done a west shift overnight. And for what it's worth, the blue line is the UK Met model. And the UK is initially having the storm. It had this storm going south basically every single run that it did. It correctly kind of modeled its evolution when every other model was going north. Yeah, the graphics, the graphics are really good, and I appreciate the graphics that you did. Those were very good, and I actually used them. So could it go even further west? And that's a good question. It's a very real possibility, and you can kind of see where the range of possibilities are from the UK Met model. Hello, Ethan. The UK Met model has this going over near Houston, where basically the CMCI is over near New Orleans. Now, the CMCI, I'm kind of discounting. Every other single model is further west today in its envelope. So this is kind of, but the CMCI, what it does give you is it does give you the worst case scenario if it goes further east. And for reference, the UK Met model basically gives the worst case scenario for if it goes further west. So that's kind of the way I tend to look at this, is like you have your mean kind of tracks down the middle here, and then your outlier tracks, but they kind of give you an idea of where it could go. So you have basically a range of where this thing could end up going. And the National Hurricane Center cone, we'll go to the official cone so you guys can kind of get a better understanding of it. And we'll go to the 3-day cone. You can see that 3-day cone has it anywhere from near West Texas all the way through central Louisiana. But a direct landfall point seems somewhere likely within this general vicinity in here. So I'm going to be very curious to see. Rainfall potential from Laura. Again, some rainfall in the South Florida region. Even some rainfall through the Florida Panhandle into Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. But this is kind of where the core track is going to be in this general vicinity. That's where the core track is currently expected to be. There is the threat for some isolated tornadoes from this. And we'll go out to tomorrow's forecast here. Marginal risk for severe weather across portions of Louisiana tomorrow. So it's moving pretty fast. Yeah, it's moving rather quick. It's moving at about 21 miles per hour towards the west-northwest. So, and you can kind of see the overall structure, how it's kind of doing today. Certainly doing a lot better. That's for sure. I'm certainly a little bit more impressed on the structure today than yesterday. And you can kind of see these new thunderstorms developing near the supposed low-level center circulation in through here. And the recon plane that was in there did find pressures of about 1,002. I'm going to see what they found on this latest pass through. Let's see, about 1,005, 1,001. So it seems like pressures are about 1,001 to 1,002 millibars. So that's kind of what the pressures look like right now. And that's certainly not expected, or certainly is expected right now. So it has an abundant circulation. Yeah, its circulation is rather robust. And we talked about that yesterday, how that circulation was unlikely to weaken over the mountains. And it barely weakened it at all. And that is a very concerning... This is a really concerning thing going forward because, and as I talked about in the beginning, this is the developing inner core structure, and most models at this time yesterday expected Laura to be inland. So now that it's further south and west, and it's moving northwest, or west-northwest into an area of very, relatively flat area, even through Cuba, the western part of Cuba, this has a chance to strengthen all the way up to here. So thank you very much. I really greatly appreciate that. I really tried to do and give as much, into these videos as I certainly can. Of course, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll, of course, be there to answer those questions. So, but, one of the main concerns that I'm seeing today is that this seems to be a little bit more towards the south and west, and that's certainly a concern for later down the road when it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. And, I said just a moment ago, there's the possibility that this does come a little bit further towards the west over near Houston and the Galveston area, or there is the possibility that it actually comes a little bit further east. It just really depends on the launching point that we get from this. If it is having a burst of convection, or is it having a burst? Yes. You can kind of see that little burst of convection that does kind of occur here, and it tries to rotate around. And that's a strong sign that we have a fairly well robust low-level circulation in there. Because usually in tropical cyclones, what happens when they're first forming, you don't get that rotation. So, but the fact that we're getting that circulation to really be visible on the visible satellite imagery shows that we have a well-developed structure currently. Why do hurricanes only develop in the tropics? Is it the heat? Yes. So hurricanes by nature need the moisture content from the ocean. And, tropical cyclones, they can't, that's why they weaken over land, because they are not, the latent heat release potential is not the same on land as it is in water. There's just so much more energy over water and more potential for a significant latent heat release than on land. Even though, like Florida, for example, has, a bunch of lakes, the only real one lake that it's able to, that any tropical cyclone going over would maybe be able to survive and not weaken as much, would be Lake Okeechobee, because it's such a big lake. And it's a very expansive region. And even the Everglades, we've seen tropical cyclones intensify a little bit over that area. That's because of what's known as the brown ocean effect, but that's getting into a lot more physics and stuff like that. But for a short answer, it's just latent heat release in the atmosphere is not the same over water as it is on land. So these tropical cyclones are driven from the heat of the ocean. I'm not liking what I'm seeing where Laura is. No, I'm not either, to be quite honest there, Michael. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I do not like where the storm is situated, because, the fact that it's not over land right now indicates to me that this has a greater potential of organizing today and less chance of significant weakening here. So, it's a little bit concerning. Laura looks beautiful and healthy, yeah. It certainly does look pretty healthy this morning. It does have a little bit of wind shear that's impacting it right now, and some of that is its own shear kind of hurting the storm. But it's also a little bit part thanks to Michael, or not Michael, from Marco rather. But the storm seems to be trying to consolidate around a common area right here and move west-northwest. And then at that point in time, once it reaches the Gulf of Mexico, all bets are basically off at that point. You also notice what we were talking about with the Florida impacts here. This band that's kind of coming ashore near Key West. So, what if Marco doesn't interact with land? I'm thinking it will. Let me take a drink of water real quick. So, I'm thinking it will, because the way that Marco is, and we'll kind of pull that up. Actually, I don't have the thing here, but there we go. So Tropical Storm Marco this morning does not look all that greatly organized, but you can already start to see how this is now starting to make that turn out this way. You can really see that out here, that it's starting to make that turn towards the northwest. It's unlikely that it's just going to kind of meander around down in this region, because the steering flow at the low levels is strongly out of the northwesterly direction. And this is kind of one of the things that was battling some of the shear, some of that southwest to northeast shear. And you can see how that's blowing the mid-level center towards the north, our exposed low-level center of circulation here, and now that's starting to make that turn. So we're likely to see this make land impacts. Yeah, unfortunately, it feels like a Category 4 or 5 might happen. Katrina went to the Gulf, and I'm hurt. Yeah. As a Category 5 hurricane, though, and I will kind of caution that, the one thing is that Category 5s in the Atlantic Basin are rare, but they do happen, as we've seen. But, this has the potential to be certainly a major hurricane, that's for sure. For Texas residents, if Laura passes over the extreme western tip of Cuba or even the Yucatan Channel, does it mean that this... So a Texas exclusive. Let's kind of jump to your question there. So thank you, Patrick, for asking. So here is Laura right here. Well, not right there, but this will be where it is in the Gulf of Mexico, roughly. If this passes over the western tip of Cuba, it is entirely possible that this will become a further west moving storm. And we can kind of see that on the tracks here, that the further south and west it gets in the short term, like the UK Met model is suggesting, that it goes over the far western tip of Cuba, the western part of Cuba, and it moves more into Texas, then yes, it would be. The further west it gets in the short term is the greater potential and greater likelihood that this becomes a problem for Texas and not Louisiana. But if it stays on its current trajectory, this would probably be a Louisiana and Texas problem. So I hope that answered your question. Do you think it will become a Category 3? With Laura, yes, it is certainly likely that it could become a Category 3. I just took over the experimental genesis probabilities. They marked a wave with a 0. Is that out in the main development region there, John? This will probably be possible, but what if it crosses the Yucatan Peninsula? So with it crossing the Yucatan Peninsula, this is the Yucatan Peninsula right here. Very unlikely to see it get that far south and west. Very unlikely to see this actually get that far south and west, because the steering motion is out in the low levels. It's out in the northwest. And right now, this is still somewhat of a shallower system, so it is still following that northwesterly trajectory. So very unlikely to see it get as far west as the Yucatan Peninsula. So do you think it could have another center reformation? So as center reformations were likely done with center reformations, and the reason why is now because it's kind of clearing the mountainous terrain here of Cuba and moving into flat land. The center reformations is unlikely to happen, especially if it builds a well-established inner core today before moving over Cuba. The center and its inner core structure is unlikely to be significantly disrupted enough to cause an additional center reformation. So it's likely done with reforming centers and kind of jostling around. But it is entirely possible that we might have the center, kind of the storm as a whole, kind of drift around westward before moving west-northwest. Some kind of small oscillations, but large-scale reformations are likely over. For the rest of the storm's lifetime. UK Met model has been the most accurate for 2020. Yeah, it's been a very accurate, and I noticed that it does have a strong ridge bias. But it may just be either coincidental or by pure model skill that the UK Met has actually predicted everything to be correct so far with Laura. The National Hurricane Center is not going to mark it yet, but the experimental genesis they marked it. Now, I don't know if that wave... I think that's... I think that is the wave that we might have been talking about last night, John. I think it might have been the wave last night. And usually give it a couple of days, and if it looks good coming off of Africa, the Hurricane Center is probably going to mark it, especially if it gets model support. I have to go to college now. Thank you for the updates. Hey, thank you for stopping in, and have a great time in college, man. It's going to be exciting. My first day today. My first day was today, and I actually just finished some of my work already. Do you think strengthening? Do you think it's strengthening right now as it's over the higher upper ocean heat content? So the higher upper ocean heat content values it is playing a role into, and yes, it is helping to build that inner core structure. But as Recon found, if it wants to load for me, as reconnaissance aircraft found, it is possible that this is still a very broad mess in here. It's still a broad, loosely organized system, and that is mainly because of how it came off from the mountains. But it is trying to reorganize, and it could strengthen a little bit more, yes. You're one of the only YouTubers that answer questions. Thank you again for all your hard work. Well, thank you very much. And I'm grateful that, you know, you kind of appreciate the work that I do. And yeah, I mean, I like answering questions from people. You know, I like being able to kind of teach people new things and help people understand these situations better. And it helps me learn. It helps everyone else learn too. So looks like Marco weakened yesterday, maybe because of the upper level trough. Yeah, and that's what it was. And if we go to the wind shear map here, we'll look at that. We'll go to the larger, actually, no, we'll go to the zoomed in scale. And there we go. So this was the upper level trough. The trough axis is way back here. But you notice how in that kind of front quadrant, it's actually producing this vertical wind shear of about 25 to 30 knots. And that just streamed over the system. And you move a storm into 25 or 30 knots of shear, you know, don't even think about it trying to organize in that sort of environment. You know, don't even think about it, because 25 to 30 knots of shear, it's going to basically decouple the low and mid-level vortexes. So that was one of the main reasons. But now you notice what's in the Gulf of Mexico awaiting what is a strengthening Laura. You know, all this, you know, green in here is favorable wind shear. And, you know, this upper level anticyclone is going to be moving back over. This upper trough is going to be breaking down. And it's going to allow a whole environmental basin to be, you know, whole Gulf of Mexico to be favorable. So that's a little bit concerning, is the fact that we got this big upper level anticyclone over here, another one positioned back over here, and this is basically going to retrograde back this way and allow, as the storm moves, it's going to ventilate itself even, and it's just going to create basically a dual outflow channel, and it's going to allow it to strengthen pretty significantly. And that's one of the things that I do not like to see, is that this has significant interaction with this upper level anticyclone, and you're just going to get a lot of outflow and allow it to strengthen fairly significantly, probably in the Gulf. Great job, Mike, between you and Levi Cowan. Well, thank you very much. I mean, Levi certainly knows a lot more than I do. That's for sure. I think he works for NOAA's Hurricane Research Division now, if I'm not mistaken, or he might work for AML, I think. And yeah, Mark Sudduth, he's really good as well. Marco's like the appetizer and Laura's the main meal. Yeah, literally, because, you know, Marco was like the little thing that just kind of gets out of the way. You know, you might order for an appetizer, basically. But Laura is what's going to be the main show. And you know, to be truthfully honest, I was never deeply concerned with Marco. I mean, there was always an inherent risk it might intensify significantly with such a small, such a small center that is very susceptible to these quick changes. But, you know, this thing is going to really intensify fairly quickly. Mike, I have a feeling that 2020 hurricane season might surpass 2005. In 2005, I think we had about 28 named storms, if I'm not mistaken. But we're at about, what, 14? Yeah, we're at 14 right now. 14 and almost 3 hurricanes. Laura will be our 3rd hurricane and likely our first major, so that will be interesting. Do you think we could get one last storm for August? You know, to kind of better illustrate the potential there, let's go to the weathernerds.org site here. And I'm going to kind of show you what the EPS ensembles are forecasting. Give me one moment here. Just give me 1 second here. Just replying back to something real quick. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at our zoomable tracks here. We'll just put this on a loop and tracks to on. Put this on a loop. I could tell that if there was no upper level trough, Marco would have. Oh yeah, Marco would have rapidly intensified, undoubtedly. The first things first with Laura, you notice how some of the EPS tracks continue this all the way into Texas. So Texas to Louisiana needs to monitor, and then we start to get more signals of development out here in off the Cabo Verde Islands. And we can kind of see that it really starts to ramp up here towards the end where we get multiple different tracks here. So this would be out towards September 3rd, but to end August, this would be the end of August. It is certainly possible. So in your opinion, Cuba isn't going to do anything to disrupt Laura further? No, not really that much. Laura in itself is now has moved over the most mountainous terrain here of southern Cuba. And it's now moving into relatively flat terrain in through here. And you know what? We can do this. I'm going to illustrate this in a better manner. I'm going to pull up a terrain map here for you guys so that you can kind of see how it's going to interact with Cuba. Alright, so let's database, web, OSM, and the topography. Okay, there we go. So what we're looking at here is a topography map, and you can see that here in the southern part of Cuba, right here, this is basically where Laura kind of came over. And you can see all of this very mountainous terrain in through here. That's kind of the warmer colors, if you'll so to say. These warmer colors is basically your higher terrain values. And what's actually occurring is now Laura will be moving over, yes, some mountainous terrain, but it's not anywhere near what it was farther south over this part of the world right here in southern Cuba. So unlikely to significantly hinder, significantly hinder much development. Maria was like that in 2017, already a tropical storm, but the upper level trough is moving away. Yeah, that is certainly for sure that, Maria had one of those very weird situations where, that happened. But that's something certainly that we'll have to kind of keep in mind of is how, the outflow channels interact with Laura. But, if Marco did not have the upper level shear and instead it was turning more northeast, basically in trying to align itself with the shear vectors, it likely would have been a major hurricane, undoubtedly. This will be 4 hurricanes after Marco, no majors yet, nothing like 2005. Yeah, and it's certainly nothing in terms of 2005 in terms of major hurricanes, but, and I like to kind of make this reference here. If you get a major hurricane coming down your region, if you get a major hurricane coming down your neck of the woods, that's your 2005 season. So it's just like the April 27th, 2011 tornado outbreak, where, every time we get a tornado outbreak that the parameters look anything like 2011, everyone starts asking, is it going to be like April 27th? My answer to that is, if you get a tornado coming down your street, that's your April 27th. In this case, this is the same example. If you get a major hurricane coming through your area, or even a hurricane that dumps a lot of rain, that's your 2005 right there. So, it's all kind of in the perspective of, what impacts it brings. So, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe a category 4. Yeah, it's certainly possible. And even Levi Cowan said, prepare for about a category 3 or category 2 to 4, which is certainly possible, because given the structure right now, and as I alluded to just a moment ago, you notice the area that it's going over isn't that mountainous and through here. And it's a very narrow area. I mean, this area isn't very wide at all, actually. We can kind of measure that a little bit. Jump down to the Key West radar site. So we'll kind of measure where it's expected to kind of go over from the National Hurricane Center track. So we'll place a marker right there, and towards the end of it, it only has about 52 miles to go over. So 52 miles, and it should only take roughly maybe about a couple of hours. Severe thunderstorm warning right now for Homestead and Florida City, south of the Miami radar site. Let's see what that's about. 60-mile-an-hour winds and tornado possible. So let's jump to that real quick. You know, I wasn't expecting any significant damage with Laura in the Caribbean. Already saw reports of flash flooding. Yeah, you know, there was some very significant flash flooding in, you know, Hispaniola and the Dominican Republic in that region. So, hopefully this will load for me. But there is a severe thunderstorm warning right now that does include the southern Miami region near Homestead, Florida. So that will kind of be one thing to be mindful of, that there is some strong thunderstorms in that vicinity, a couple of which may produce some tornadoes. Have to leave in 5. Well, have fun, and you know, certainly have a great rest of your afternoon. By the way, for everyone watching real quickly, you are not going to have an afternoon update from me today because I'm going to work at about 3 p.m. Eastern, and I don't know what time I'm off tonight, so I'll probably be getting back later this evening, roughly around about 7 or 8. So, because today's my first day working, so it's my first job, so I have virtual school. Yeah, virtual school was kind of, you know, I did that for a little bit when we started going to distant learning back in high school, and now I'm doing it for college, so great illustration, thanks. I figured that the mountains didn't disrupt it yet. Yeah, the mountainous terrain in here didn't really disrupt it significantly, and you can still see that there's a fairly well-established inner core, so there's a fairly well-established inner core with it, and let's see what recon. There's recon. So recon has just kind of been circling that area. I wonder if there might be. Do you want a thumbnail but without the date? Yeah, if you could make that, that would be great. Kind of just without the date for like the hurricane outlook and discussions, almost like the one you DM me on Twitter, basically, just without the date. If you could do that. So pressures seem to be right now at about 1,003 to 1,004. Do a live show all day. You know, I really wish I could. You know, I did one for about almost 2.5 hours yesterday. My voice was just starting to get really tired out after that. Unfortunately, today I have to go into work at about 3. So that means I have to leave the house because work isn't that far, but I have to leave the house at about 2:30 because I want to be to work early. So it's always best to get to work early, that's for sure. Early bird gets the worm. Texas here. Good job, Mike. Thank you very much, and stay safe down there in Texas. One of the things that we're seeing here from the reconnaissance aircraft that's a little bit interesting is you notice kind of all of these little eddies in through here, all of these little circles. That's kind of your areas of lower pressure, and notice that we have multiple of them, which means this is still kind of a broad center and it's not very well organized. And that's something that we're going to have to kind of keep in mind, is that there might be the potential that might happen. Bye, I'll see you later. Have a great day, and I will talk to you later, and have fun with virtual school. So we're going to go over the 11 o'clock advisory that just came out from the Hurricane Center. So sustained winds down to about 60 miles per hour. At the 11 o'clock advisory package. Why didn't the mountains rip it right up? So what actually happened is when storms don't have a fairly well-established inner core, they actually have a better chance of surviving through the mountains. And all of these center reformations that kind of occurred helped to kind of tug the low-level center away from the highest mountains. But even when it went through Hispaniola, the conservation of angular momentum theory, that's basically one of the reasons why. Basically, it was a very vigorous circulation, and the mountains were not enough to basically kill it off. And also the fact of the matter that we had not a well-established inner core, which saved it. Because storms with a well-developed inner core, you might think that it actually would help it survive. But in the inner core of a tropical cyclone, once it gets well established and it goes over, land masses or mountains, it just significantly disrupts it, and the storm environment gets completely, basically corrupted, and it can't regenerate itself. And we saw that with Maria in 2017. So dang, school is at 10:30. Oof. Yeah, the good thing for me is that I don't have to, I don't have to be on at school for, at any particular time. I can just do it when I kind of feel like it, as long as I get work in by the due dates. So for the 11 o'clock advisory, this is the 11 o'clock advisory package from the National Hurricane Center, forecasting this to come over the extreme western part of the Cuba area and become a hurricane on Tuesday evening, and becoming a hurricane here, becoming potentially close to major hurricane strength on Wednesday, before making landfall. The discussion has this at about 105 miles per hour, and we're going to read the discussion out. It's a very lengthy discussion by forecaster Brown. So let's see. So Laura's satellite presentation has degraded somewhat since yesterday. Oh, it's optional. It's not necessarily optional, but I don't have to be on like Zoom meetings and stuff like that. Like those aren't required. But as long as I get the work in by like the due dates, then I'm good. So Laura's satellite presentation has degraded somewhat since yesterday. However, there has been a recent increase in convection near the center and a large band over the southern periphery of the circulation. It appears that the combination of land interaction, a moderate northerly shear, and some dry air has caused a change in structure. With the NOAA and Air Force reconnaissance have reported several believable surface winds, that's the SFMR winds, of 45 to 50 knots and a minimum pressure of about 1,002. Based on these initial observations, the wind speed was set to 50 knots. Laura's forecast to pass over the warm water of extreme northwestern Caribbean Sea just south of the coast of Cuba today, and some modest strengthening is possible before the center moves over the western part of Cuba this evening. This is very important because this could have impacts down the road. Laura is forecast to then emerge of the southern Gulf of Mexico overnight, where a combination of warm sea surface temperatures and a favorable upper-level environment are expected to allow for steady strengthening. And given these conductive upper-level wind patterns depicted by the global models, a period of rapid strengthening is possible once Laura reorganizes an inner core after its passage through western Cuba. The regional hurricane models remain quite bullish on intensification, and the GFS and UK Met models indicate significant deepening while Laura moves over the Gulf of Mexico. The statistical guidance is not as aggressive, and that's important. And the National Hurricane Center is in good agreement with the intensity consensus stage, which lie between the higher solutions of the regional and the ships and LGEM guidance. So for intensity, it does look like that this could become a major hurricane, although not explicitly stated. But for what it's worth, the statistical models are not quite as bullish on intensification as the regional GFS, the UK Met, and then the hurricane models like the HWRF and HMON. That's important, but I have a feeling that those hurricane models may come close to verifying at least a little bit. Laura has been moving steadily west-northwest on a west-northwest track over the past day or so. Laura should begin to turn northwest Tuesday night in response to the break in the ridge. And the storm is expected to reach the northwest Gulf Coast Wednesday night. The cyclone should be embedded within the mid-latitude westerlies by day 4, or its remnant should recurve north and east-northeast. So that's for that. This is very important. Users are reminded to not focus on the exact details of the track and intensity, as average National Hurricane track error at 72 hours is 100 miles, and the average intensity is about 15 miles per hour or 13 knots. In addition, wind, storm surge, and rainfall hazards will extend away from the center by a good bit. So what that means is for you folks that do live, we'll kind of switch back to this. For you folks that live all the way from Galveston and Houston, all the way through the portions of the eastern Louisiana area. You need to be monitoring the progress of this system carefully, as this will eventually be moving in your direction. So I would keep monitoring that if I were you. So that is very important, and a very important kind of change in the forecast. So we're going to have to watch for a lot of things upcoming, because it is possible that we're likely going to see a more robust area of intensification. So, and this is from Levi Cowan. I'm looking at this on my phone, but this is from Levi Cowan from Tropical Tidbits. He indicates that the recon data continues to indicate that Laura is staying south of central Cuba and getting a little bit further offshore in recent hours. We will continue to monitor Laura's motion today, as it could help narrow down which part kind of gets hit along the Gulf Coast. So that's very important going forward, that Laura might be moving a little bit more due west. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that, Max. I will look at that once I stop the stream here, and I'll look at that. If the UK does nail Laura, it will bring catastrophic impacts to Houston. It would certainly bring very big impacts, and we can take a look at the UK Met model for what it's worth. Let's go to Pivotal Weather, and we'll look at that. Look at the UK. There's the UK Met, and we'll go South Central United States, and 10-meter wind. So this is the UK Met model that we're kind of looking for. So that's Marco down here, and you can kind of see where that happens, and then boom, there is the UK Met showing a hurricane in this part of the world. Now, again, now that we're kind of in closer proximity, we're going to start showing where these models show landfall. So I want to make it known that this isn't for hype, but now that we're kind of getting in the time frame that these models can start to show landfall point, we're going to kind of start to show that, because it is within the 5-day realm. But the UK Met model has 950 millibars over portions of South Texas there, or over Central Texas rather, and that would bring catastrophic impacts. Well, not especially catastrophic, but this would be a major hurricane on the model. And that's showing roughly about 90 plus knots of wind. That would be a fairly big hurricane. And for rainfall, if that was to verify, you would easily get over 13 or 14 inches of rain if that were to verify. So for what it's worth, that's the UK Met. The Euro is a little bit further away than that, though. Your European runs, if we can get the 10-meter winds, there we go. The European is obviously a little bit further towards the east, with a landfall point somewhere here near Louisiana-Texas border at 972 millibars, which is almost exactly where the National Hurricane Center has us making landfall at right now, is right around that region. So the Euro is kind of following the National Hurricane Center path quite well. Let's see, the GFS high res, and we'll go to they don't have the winds, so we'll move to the GFS regular model and the 10-meter winds. And if you guys do want to go check this out, it's pivotalweather.com. You guys can go check it out if you guys are interested. But you can see the GFS forecast is pinpointing mostly a little bit further east than those two models. But it's kind of forecasting right near this general vicinity in south central Louisiana, for what it's worth. Let's see. The Canadian, for what it's worth, this is the Canadian model showing that there's Marco further west on the Canadian on the 0Z. Or I'm sorry, this is, this is 0Z. And showing a little bit further west, but a lot weaker, 995 here moving into Louisiana. But for landfall, it looks like that we're kind of narrowing down somewhere along Louisiana or Texas, that we're kind of starting to narrow things down. Eastern Louisiana, though, you can still notice that at least on here, you can still kind of get that flow. This could provide some storm surge threats for portions of Louisiana and Mississippi. We're not going to look at the NAM. Quick reference here. Never look at the NAM 3 kilometer for tropical cyclones because, and I'm not going to show the landfall out of this, but look at what the NAM 3 kilometer does. For what it's worth, don't use the NAM 3 kilometer. Just whatever you do, do not use it. It is not good for tropical cyclones at all. And anyone that posts it and says it's going to happen, it ain't going to happen. So, just a quick tidbit there. The NAM 3 kilometer shall not be used. It is just not good. But most models have this making landfall somewhere near Louisiana, the eastern or western part of Louisiana into western parts of Texas. So that seems to be the general consensus upon landfall for Tropical Storm Laura. Again, if you guys do want to go follow me, I'll be posting consistent updates throughout the day when I can. There's my Twitter handle, @MikeRomali1. You can guys go follow me there. Again, thank you, Max, for making that awesome graphic there. He made this for me, and that's now my banner on the Twitter. So if you guys do want to go follow me, make sure to go follow me there, because I'll be doing updates throughout the day while I can. And of course, while I'm at work, I can't use my phone, so I won't be updating. But also, I'm in the danger area. I live in Cameron, Louisiana. Yeah, you know, basically, and I'm going to say this very loosely, that all of Louisiana has some threat here. So, all of it. All of Louisiana has a threat, but it looks like landfall is going to be confined to east or western Louisiana and to western Texas. The models are starting to kind of come into solution with that now. So that's kind of one of your better things that we're starting to understand now. So we'll take a look at this. This is the other gem model, I think. And this kind of only goes out to 48 hours, but shows the general thinking as the Canadian, moving off towards the west-northwest and deepening as it approaches this area. But again, you know, I don't think it will happen on the NAM 3 kilometer on how strong the storm, but rapid intensification. Yeah, and so here's the thing, right? The NAM 3 kilometer is not a hurricane specific model. It was never designed to forecast hurricanes. The NAM 3 kilometer is a convective allowing model forecast specifically for severe weather and general everyday weather, not hurricanes. Hurricanes are not general everyday weather. So the NAM 3 kilometer isn't a model that I'm going to trust at all. And honestly, quite honestly, it's annoying when I see people posting about it and stuff, because it's like it's not going to happen. It was right on I think it was right on like 2 occasions. Dorian last year and Michael in 2018, I think it was correct on. So, just a little thing there, but in general, it's not correct, because it seems to deepen every single storm. But the UK Met model, for what it's worth, the UK Met is showing a very powerful hurricane on approach into Texas here over the next few days. And this is what I said, anywhere from Texas to Louisiana is going to be in this kind of area where you guys are really going to have to monitor, because this could, in fact, make landfall near Texas or western Louisiana. Well, I can evacuate. Yeah, you know, the thing with evacuation, though, is, of course, you're going to have to kind of keep in mind everything with the pandemic currently. Certainly, family needs, what kind of family needs you guys have. Is there anyone with special ability or requiring special assistance, etc.? And make sure you have enough supplies to last you about a week. FEMA now recommends up to a week after Hurricane Michael in 2018 and Dorian. So, if my grandma was still, we would have to stay. Yeah, and this is kind of one of the very unfortunate things. But I'm very sorry about your loss, man. It's definitely a sad thing. But for what it's worth, the UK Met model has been kind of forecasting where the position with Laura is going to be quite well. And it kind of has predicted the south movement all along. So, I'm not saying that the UK Met model is going to verify 100%, but it is quite interesting. So, by the way, I'm going to start to wrap this up here at about 11:30. We're going to kind of end this, or maybe a little bit sooner, so I can go ahead and grab some lunch and kind of get ready for work. So, but of course, I'll be doing updates here on Twitter. So if you guys have any kind of final questions, go ahead and ask. I figured I'd get in here and do a little bit of a stream today, and I might actually do one later tonight once I get home. Just have to see what time I get off. But if you guys have any final kind of questions, wrapping up questions, I'll be more than happy to kind of answer those. But if not, we'll kind of end this here in a couple of minutes. One real quick thing that I will say, though, is this is a fairly interesting structure, and I would not be surprised to see this try to intensify modestly down here. What are the chances of this becoming a Category 4? So, the chances of this explicitly becoming a Category 4 is moderate, I would say, but it's still a little too soon to determine. And the reason why is because I really want to see how it does down here and then through the western part of Cuba. I got here like quick summary on Marco, please. Okay, so Marco has weakened, and it is no longer a significant tropical cyclone, although it is still at about 50 miles per hour or so. And there is going to be some impacts to the Florida Panhandle here in terms of gusty winds, heavy rainfall, flash flooding, and some isolated tornadoes from Marco. So that kind of the brief summary. This is also going to now start to be turning more off towards the west, northwest, and eventually west. So that is the brief summary there on Marco. But my opinion for Category 4, I would say a medium. There's a moderate chance of this becoming a Category 4. It's really kind of hard to determine that currently because I really want to see how it's going to do with its inner core structure today and what's going to be left after Western Cuba. Although Western Cuba isn't that hilly and mountainous, but I still want to see how it's going to interact with land, because if this actually slides a little bit further south, then certainly it has a much higher chance. So we're just kind of waiting to see how things end up playing out. So yeah, it's certainly about to look better. That's certainly for sure. It's certainly going to start looking better here. And again, for what it's worth, where it's kind of be going over, this isn't very mountainous terrain out here. So it's certainly not anything like the terrain of Hispaniola and southern Cuba out here. That was very mountainous terrain and through here, and even Kingston, Jamaica, in this area, fairly mountainous as well. So Katrina had no problem with interaction over Florida. Yeah, it didn't. And Florida, we can kind of see that Florida, though, it's a lot more flat than Western Cuba. So, but I suspect that it won't have many problems. So, The center seems to be wanting to shift further west, and this is looking notable on satellite, and I believe we have a better chance to miss the western tip. Yeah, it's going to be something that we're going to really have to watch, because, you know, if this ends up kind of sneaking its way further west like this, coming over the very flat area, it's not going to have much disruption. If it comes over western part here, right over this mountain, you know, this kind of mountainous terrain, it will have some slight disruption, but not much at all. So, you know, a lot is going to kind of be determinant on that. Laura may do Katrina-like strengthening. That's what I'm concerned about the most. Yeah, you know, I'm certainly a little bit concerned that you know, that's certainly going to be something that's going to happen. Is Baton Rouge still in place? So Baton Rouge. Basically, my general consensus right now is everyone is at risk right now. All the way from Houston all the way over to the eastern part of Louisiana. And what the thing about specific cities is everyone is going to see some sort of impact. Especially, you know, near New Orleans. The further closer you get towards, obviously, the center, you're going to have more impacts. But all the way into Mississippi, you will feel some impacts. So, to answer your question, yes. But in terms of directly receiving the center, probably not. But it is still possible. So don't take your eye off of it. It's out of my hands, but I'm still in control. Okay. Weather Channel said millions without power, over a dozen deaths, and Laura's destructive. You know, so it is destructive in its own right, and, you know, yes, there have been people that have lost their life over it. Millions without power, I don't know that for sure, but, you know, it doesn't seem far-fetched. But, you know, it almost seems like kind of like they're trying to throw it at you to kind of get in the news cycle, if you know what I mean. H-Warf and H-Mod have been very consistent on Laura. Yeah, they have been. And for what it's worth, I mean, even the UK Met model is starting to come into idea with both of those systems. And I think we have the H-Warf. Do we have the H-Warf? No, we don't. But the H-Warf was strengthening this pretty decently. I'm concerned about Laura setting off a bomb in the Gulf. Yeah. You know, it could intensify rather rapidly. You know, it wouldn't be impossible for this thing to deepen. And even the National Hurricane Center notes that in their 11 o'clock advisory package that this could intensify a lot more than currently anticipated. So it's going to be something that we're really going to have to watch here, because I'm a little bit concerned of doing exactly what you said, basically just going off in the Gulf. And with that visible satellite shot right there, that is a very telltale sign. You can already start to see that inner core trying to wrap up in here. That's definitely getting better organized, and that is a fairly good inner core structure in here, moving generally this way. Let's see if Recon went back through the center fix yet. Let's see. Did Recon go through the center fix? I have no idea why the internet is being... So they actually... Whoa. That's a little bit of a change. Notice how that was the old center there. That's the new center. Okay, so... This is a little concerning. That's the Air Force reconnaissance plane too. That's not moving this way anymore. That's moving almost due west almost, it looks like. Now, whether this was a center relocation or whatever, it's possible, because the overall motion should be west-northwest, but that's concerning. Getting that far west like that. Getting that far west in that amount of time, you know, whether that's a center reformation or whether or not that is representative of a new center that's moving a completely different direction, I'm going to be rather interested in that, because that has the potential, excuse me, to kind of change the ball game there. Because if that moves any further off and deviates any further off towards, the left, that's going to be a problem going forward. So, that's going to be a problem going forward, is this low-level center, seems to be drifting around a little bit. I mean, because you can clearly see from the last pass of the Air Force reconnaissance aircraft, and I think they're probably going to head out now, but the overall motion was west-northwest, and this could just be a new center fix, because you can see 1,006 millibars compared to 1,002 in here. So it is possible that this might not be the true center, but this may be. So that's entirely possible. But this is kind of one broad area, one broad structure. But this new convective burst should be able to kind of tighten it up a little bit more. Another tweet from Levi Cowan over here. So, Levi does state that, is there anything that could hinder LORD's intensification in the Gulf of Mexico? There is a modest amount of mid-level wind shear impacting LORD that may persist through Tuesday. We'll hope that hinders the storm, but with all else being favorable, LORD just might shrug it off. And northerly mid-level shear also bases the convection distribution to the south side, which may continue to tug on the center and do short-term motion slightly south of some model guidance, and we'll be watching for that trend today. So that came directly from Levi. So, that basically tells us that there might be some more center readjustments further south and west. So it is entirely possible that this may just come through the far western part and not really bother the mountains up here. And that would be something that we'll have to watch for in the Gulf of Mexico. All right, see ya. Have a great rest of your morning and afternoon. But that's going to be a problem going forward time. Thank you very much. Hope you have a great day too. And of course, I'll probably be back on later as well. So make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications for when I go live and stuff like that. If you want to catch my streams. But that's going to be a problem. So, we're looking at some short-term motion adjustments further south. And if that happens, like I said, this is going to come over the relatively flat area of western Cuba and through here, so that we may not get a significant disruption in the core. That is an entirely possible scenario. So that seems to be that. So in Eric Webb, this is from Eric Webb on Twitter. As others have mentioned, looks like Recon is finding another robust, closed low-level center about 1 degree, approximately 1 degree due west of LORD's previous low-level center fix. If this center becomes dominant, it would have major track and intensity changes going forward. So that's going to have some impacts and implications going forward. And they did find it as a closed center from Recon. But with that being said, I'm going to start wrapping it up. So if anyone has any last kind of remaining questions, go ahead and ask now. And then if not, I'm going to go ahead and kind of get ready to eat some lunch and head off to work here in about 3 hours. So, of course, if you want to catch my latest updates here on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel and enable notifications. And of course, I'll be doing updates on Twitter as well. Where do you think the core will really be by the time the next... I certainly think the core could be somewhere in this general vicinity in through here or here. Are you going to make a video discussion in the afternoon? I'm not going to be able to because I'll be working by the normal time I do my video discussions. Now, because it's training day for me today with work, it will likely not be that long of a shift today. So I probably will not have time to do a video discussion this afternoon, but definitely by tonight. So my next stream will be by probably later tonight, probably around 8 o'clock or so p.m. Eastern time. That will probably be my next stream, roughly about 8 o'clock Eastern time. So it just kind of depends. I don't know when I get off from work tonight, but I'll figure that out when I get there. So. The most recent H1 would cause catastrophic for Houston and Galveston. Yeah, you know, and again, I'm not going to specifically focus on one model run, but it is concerning that the H1 and UK Met might be starting to come into a little bit better of an agreement. And if the H4 follows that, that's going to be something interesting. And certainly with the fact that this low-level center might be trying to get a little bit further towards the south and west, it's a little bit concerning as well. So with that being said, though, I do appreciate everyone for kind of tuning in today. You know, of course, I will be doing updates on Twitter. So if you guys do want to go follow me, Mike Romali1 here on Twitter. Does Key West have anything to worry about? Not necessarily, but there will be some strong winds and heavy rain that do kind of come across those areas today. You can already start to see some of the bands. This is actually Laura right here. And some of the bands from Laura will be affecting Key West. You can see a severe thunderstorm warning for portions of near Miami Homestead. And you can also see that we had a gust of about 65 miles per hour or 56 knots. So there will be some rain bands from time to time that could produce strong tropical storm force winds, but this will not impact you guys directly. You can also see where the center is a little bit further south here of where it is on the current National Hurricane Center forecast path. So that's going to be something to watch throughout the day. So again, if you guys want to go follow me at Mike Romali1 here on YouTube or on Twitter, and subscribe to me here on YouTube for also more information. And of course, I'll be doing updates as I can throughout the day on Twitter, and then tonight here again on YouTube. All right. With that being said, thank you all for tuning in. I do greatly appreciate that. Of course, I am Michael Romali. I'll talk to you guys some more later tonight. Stay safe, everyone. I'll talk